Let's say we want to go a bit fitter. Because I hate tracking my calories, I just take a photo with Chat every day and it will just track my calories and it will break it down, the macros, everything for you, right?
Wait, I did
So
not
I'm
know
not
that.
telling. Yeah, it's something you
With
can try. It's pretty
ChatGPT on
cool.
the phone, I can just take a
Yes,
picture?
yes, yes. And even sometimes it will push things to you. So every morning when you're reading through the pulse update, you'll be like, oh, have you tried skipping today?
What's the one job AI will create that doesn't exist yet? Welcome back to AI Across Borders. I'm Dr. Aisha Khanna, and today we're going straight into the engine room of modern AI. My guest is Jerene Yang from OpenAI, a Singapore-born engineer who went from StarCraft and math competitions to building the infrastructure that keeps ChatGPT running for millions of people. This conversation is fast, honest, and full of those oh wow moments about ambition, risk, and what it actually takes to build world-changing tech. Let's dive in. Jerene, welcome to AI Across Borders.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Your journey spans Singapore and the US, startup life, big tech, and now OpenAI. Can you walk us through the defining moments that took you from I love StarCraft, mathematics, to working on the backbone that powers ChatGPT?
I wouldn't say it was like, one day I woke up and suddenly I'm like, oh, this is all I want to do. I would say it's more of a gradual transformation for me. From young, I've really liked math, and turns out that math is one of the key pillars of what computer science is, right? It's the basis of the science behind a lot of programming that we do. So when it came to choosing majors, and this was, back in the early 2010s, computer science wasn't the hot topic that it is now. And there were people who questioned my choice when I decided that, hey, I'm going to major in computer science. Also, that, I was a girl coming overseas by myself, literally the other side of the globe, right, of Singapore. But I thought, that was a very exciting opportunity for me to see what's like outside of Singapore, outside of Asia. By then, I haven't really traveled outside of Asia at all. So when I came here, that was a huge culture shock. I struggled a lot being away from the family and in a very foreign environment. I've been very excited about technology as a very young girl. My parents are also in engineering, so I would say, got bred that from the very start because they like to tinker with stuff. So I love to tinker with stuff. Then since graduation, I've always been in the tech industries, mainly in infrastructure and recently in AI. If you're in tech right now, every role involves AI in some manner or form. So, yeah, so it was a very natural transition into AI for me.
And what was the biggest mindset shift you experienced when you moved from Singapore to Silicon Valley?
So, I think a mindset that I had in Singapore is that it's default no unless someone said yes. That change in mentality really opened up the realm of possibilities in terms of writing what kind of software I can write, even just like doing things day to day, what kind of methodologies I can adopt. It encouraged me to think a lot more broadly about the things that I can possibly do or that my technology can be applied to.
And it made you fearless or more fearless.
A little bit. Yeah, more than previously. Yes.
Okay, so I have to ask, you're working at one of the most exciting companies in the world, OpenAI. Can you tell us what was that interview process like at OpenAI?
Well, because OpenAI we hire for a huge diversity of roles across many, many locations. So I think every role's interview process is going to be different. The way we find candidates, we engage with candidates is going to be different. And we have so many roles open. So if working at OpenAI piques your interest, do take a look at our openings for the Singapore office. Very excited to really grow our Asia Pacific presence there. But for me, I think the interview process really epitomizes the day to day of OpenAI. It was extremely quick, extremely efficient, and very no nonsense. So a recruiter shout out to Dan. He found me on Monday and he was like, "Hey, I've got this role. It's to lead this particular team. Looks like a great fit for your background. Are you interested in chatting?" And I was like, "Sure, let's have a chat. Why not?" Tuesday, I chatted with the tech lead for the role, the hiring manager for the role. And then they said, "Okay, looks great. Why don't you come in for the full interview on Wednesday?" So I came in for Wednesday, interviewed like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Thursday, I got the offer. Friday, I signed.
Wow. And you
Yeah,
were
it's
working before that, after college, you were working in
yes,
tech throughout.
yes.
And did they ask you any tough and mathematical questions? Or was it about your
Um,
work?
There was a round that's called technical deep dive, or for research, it's called research discussion, where it goes into you can pick any topic that you want to talk about and really just have a conversation with a fellow researcher that is interested in your work. Or, if you're doing engineering or you're doing infrastructure, then talk about system that you have designed in the past and the challenges, the problem that you're trying to solve, what you did, what were some of the controversial decisions and did it pan out? And when things go wrong, how did you fix it? You really get to see the intellect of your interviewer as well and how much they know about your area.
Oh, I love that because you get to see how somebody thinks really through a
Right.
problem.
Indeed, indeed.
Kind of reminds
Yeah.
me of a PhD viva. It's like you have to intellectually
Yes,
defend yourself instead of
that's
just
right.
answering things that's
That's right.
almost like
That's right.
memorized. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then you started working at OpenAI.
Yes.
If someone wants to
Mhm.
work at OpenAI, what is the one skill they absolutely must master?
How to be brutally efficient with their time. I think OpenAI is a very, very exciting place to work. There is a million and one things that you can work on. And they're all going to be very interesting, very, intellectually challenging, very impactful. Think about what is that unique opportunity for you where for anybody else it is going to be so difficult, but for you it is so easy because of your skill set, because of your background. That is the only thing you should be spending your time on because everything else, probably someone is better at it than you are. So that's the first one. The second one is that, we work at OpenAI. We have AI. We have internal beta versions of our agents and our models, right? Really lean on that heavily and think about how do I automate myself? How do
Mm.
I automate a lot of the day-to-day mundane or routine tasks that I have to do that is really not the best use of my time. So it ties back to the first point, which is being brutally efficient with your time. If you're in a top AI research firm, you gotta embrace AI and you really use it for every aspect of your life. Be so focused with what you actually choose to spend your time on and ensure that that brings maximum value to you, right? As an employee or even just as an individual.
Now, these are lessons that I feel I can take away from my own team and for myself as well. So love that. So now you help build the behind the scenes systems that make ChatGPT work. Now, how do you explain your job to your parents in Singapore?
My parents are engineers
Oh, that's right.
themselves, so they sort of understand a little bit better what I do. But for my grandparents
Okay.
or my relatives who don't really understand, the way I describe it is. ChatGPT is this chat bot that you chat with, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of hardware that's just whirring, trying to compute the response, right? And it is an algorithm, or you can think of it as like a big calculator. How do you make that very efficient so that you can, type in a number, press enter, and just wait for a very, very small amount of time, and you get your response. So that's sort of how I describe my role, but it is a little bit difficult. They normally just blink and then they'll give me a polite smile.
Really? But basically, you're saying that, like, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm summarizing a document, I'm even
Yeah.
generating maybe a poem or an image. Infrastructure, why should I care about that? Because it will be
Mm,
slow or it will just be
yeah.
incorrect?
Both. So there's two types of infrastructure in AI. One is what we call training infrastructure.
Mm.
A training infrastructure is where you take just nothing and train a model out of it. The second type of infrastructure is called inference infrastructure, where now that I have the model, if you think of it as a giant oracle that's able to answer questions, asking a question and getting the answer in the most efficient manner. Why does either of this matter? Well, for training, it matters because you want accuracy. You don't want the model to hallucinate. You want it to be an expert at the world's topics, from singing and dancing and cooking to really deep research in black holes. And when it comes to inference, why does it matter? Well, you want it to be fast. You want it to be cheap. Because if it's so expensive to do inference, well, then the plus subscriptions, instead of being like tens of dollars, might be thousands of dollars because we just can't scale otherwise, right? So that's why both types of infrastructure is important. So accuracy and cost.
That's so interesting. So what kind of team do you need? So you lead a team that works specifically on these two things. And what kind of team do you have? All engineers? Do you have project managers? What is a typical team makeup?
So previously, I was part of the infrastructure team that
Mm.
does a lot of the training side. Now I lead a team of researchers that research into the actual data that goes into training the models. So it's a little different, my current role versus
Mm.
my previous role, but we're very much on the research side of things.
And in the research side, as you said, you're working on research. So what exactly does that mean? What are you researching? Are you
Mhm.
researching human behavior or how AI works, or how do you decide if the data is good or not?
Yeah, so all this that you just mentioned are perfect examples of the kind of research that we do at OpenAI, right? Research is very core to our mission at OpenAI because, we want a model that is smart, that is safe, that is well aligned to the interests of mankind and, will give you helpful suggestions. So there's all these various areas of research, and our researchers come from a very, very varied set of backgrounds from academia or engineering like myself, and we all collaboratively work together, and we solve the frontier challenges that we run into as we train every new generation of models.
One of the things that everybody's noticed is that ChatGPT and OpenAI has grown insanely fast. What are some of the toughest behind the scenes challenges that everyday users never see when they're just chatting with ChatGPT?
It's hard to imagine, but actually, ChatGPT is still very young. It's only been around for 3 years, and that growth curve is crazy. I think we recently celebrated our 800 million weekly active users, which was a huge milestone for us. 3 years into the launch, I think every day, I think with some things that catch us by surprise, like the Studio Ghibli, that trend with image gen, that did catch us by surprise. Internally, we've been playing with the model for a while. We're like, oh, this is cute. I can generate a design that looks like this from that. But then once we launched the model, somebody was like, oh, make me Ghibli. And that became a thing. And it was just such a, sharp spike in terms of adoption for that product. And of course, behind the scenes, we're scrambling because we didn't think that it would be so big of a wave and people would love it so much. So we're moving capacity around to make sure that there's always gonna be an answer. Like when someone say make me Ghibli, we're gonna get a picture instead of like that red cross that we hate, or like try again later, that orange box. Yeah, so I think behind every query there is an engine, and there's a team that is working to make sure, like round the clock, to make sure that we can serve our customers with the lowest latency, the highest accuracy.
I really think most people don't appreciate that at all, because suddenly
But
the
that's
demand
good.
goes up because we don't notice it because we're just like using it. But what about internally, right? It's only 3 years old, as you said,
Mhm,
and certainly feels generative AI chatbots, ChatGPT part of daily life.
mhm,
From inside OpenAI, how do you feel
mhm.
the people who build it, who use it inside the company, having this kind of impact? What has it done to people's psyche and way of working, given that it's become so big?
So I've been with the company for slightly over a year, and I can tell you that even through the year that I've been here, I think the company has grown a lot. I would say, previously when I first joined, there was still a very like, oh, let's try this, oh, let's try that. And right now, it's a lot more user-centric in the way that we're a lot more deliberate in our decisions because just the sheer number of users and adoption that we have seen, the whole company, as the company grows, as our employee ages with the company, right? The product is going to feel a lot more mature. It's going to feel a lot more well-rounded. Internally, at least myself, I try not to think about the success of the product. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, yeah, we're already successful. I tend to think of ourselves as we're not yet successful, right? I choose to focus on those areas and seeing how I can move our benchmarks closer to where we can theoretically get to. And so I view like each of our deliverables as moving that benchmark higher, looking at where do we really need to improve. And I'm not the only one who has this attitude within the company. And I think that keeps us humble as a company.
So, speaking of the fact that you're constantly thinking of how to improve it, what to do next, most of us still think of ChatGPT as you type something and it types something back to you. And now people
Right.
talk of this world where AI will be able to speak, to be able to listen. You can interact more naturally with different kinds of modes, voice, images, real time help. I think people are going to struggle to understand this concept of multimodal AI.
Hmm.
What's one simple everyday scenario that shows
Hmm.
how this new kind of AI will actually help people?
Yeah. So I think the way that I like to adopt AI is to not think about it. I'm gonna go through my daily life and things will be AI enabled, where there will be AI as part of the things that I use. And it will make my life just a little bit better, a little bit smoother. That once again comes back to allowing me to spend my time in the way that I want to rather than I have to. So some of the examples are, for example, right now I'm planning, it's almost Thanksgiving in the US, which is like a 1 week holiday. And I'm planning a trip to, say, San Diego. I'm like, what is the best way to buy tickets? Because sometimes there's like a 2 pack, there's a 3 pack, there's a single one, and it's just really hard for me to go and search everything. So these are like questions that I can ask Chat directly, and I'd be like, hey, what is the best way? Given all the Black Friday sales that is going on, how should I buy tickets, right? An even more nuanced way that you can adopt AI in your life is, for example, say you want to buy flight tickets. You go on to Singapore Airlines and you're like, I don't know. I want to just like find something around this range, but I want it to be cheap because, I'm counting every penny. And there is the assistant that is on Singapore Airlines website that's powered by OpenAI where you can just ask it questions and it can help you, right? So these are the ways I actually prefer to engage with AI in my daily life. It's not I have to think of ChatGPT or I have to think of using an app or talking to something, but I'm just naturally going about my day and things, are just easier and I can get answers faster.
I did not know that about Singapore Airlines. I use it all the time and I'm on the phone a lot with them.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
OpenAI is actually powering their chatbot.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good to know. And do you think that will be the case that behind the scenes of many of these enterprises, companies like OpenAI will be the AI intelligence that is powering a lot of the conversations?
Yeah, exactly. So companies like OpenAI, where, there will be another layer of providers that essentially will fine tune the models that we have and making it better for a particular use case, right? For example, you can imagine my fridge may be AI enabled because, every day I open up my fridge, I'm like, what do I cook? You can imagine that in the future, your fridge might have a camera on the inside and it can compute at any time, okay, we're low on soy sauce, where we need to buy vegetables. Okay, the potato is going to rot if you don't eat it. And it will recommend the menu for you to cook like before you come home so you don't have to have that headache. Or it can be integrated and with an agentic flow where you can say, okay, if I'm low on some things, just order it directly from, NTUC for me. So then it will put that order in, the things will just come, you just pick it up, put it back, and it has the menu all planned out for you, right? So these are just little enhancements to your daily life and your routine that will make your every day just a little bit more pleasant.
Now I'm trying to get a little fitter. And so my coach told me to do meal prep, and I could really
Oh,
use help with
yes.
that, frankly, with the macros,
Yeah.
the proteins and the carbs and the
Yes.
fats. It's very exciting, this picture of AI helping us. But we have a lot of fear around AI
Hmm.
as well. Data
Hmm.
privacy. Could these AI agents do things that are, harmful to us?
Hmm.
From your perspective, what AI risks should we take seriously and which are
Hmm.
overblown?
I link back to the time when e-banking first became a thing, right? Or I think we used to call it iBanking, or yeah, where, people would not trust logging into a bank's website and putting a username and a password and being able to transfer money. They wanted to go down to a bank and work with the teller to withdraw money, right? I think it does take time, and I would say, don't try to force it. Don't try to make it faster than it is. If you're not comfortable sharing personal details, then don't. There are so many things that AI can do without you divulging any personal details, your address, your credit card, your
Mm.
passwords. Like, don't, if you're not comfortable, don't do it, right? But you can still, like, for example, back to your previous, example about, okay, let's say we want to go a bit fitter. Like, one thing I do is because I hate tracking my calories, so I just take a photo with Chat every day, and it will just track my calories, and it will break it down, the macros, everything for you, right?
Wait, I did
So
not
I'm
know
not
that.
telling. Yeah, it's
With
something you can try. It's pretty
ChatGPT on
cool.
the phone, I can just take a
Yes,
picture.
yes, yes. And now with ChatGPT Pulse, even sometimes it will like push things to you. So every morning when you're reading through the Pulse update, you'll be like, "Oh, have you tried skipping today?" You can gradually grow comfortable, and there are some people who are just never comfortable, and that is okay, because there's still other aspects of your life that it's not sensitive, not private, that AI can greatly still help you.
When you mentioned ChatGPT Pulse, I have to say I
Mhm.
don't use that. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, so based on your interest, it's just like a daily thing. It's like kind of a bit like the For You page that, I think for folks who use TikTok, initially when you tell the chatbot like what you're interested in, and then as you talk to it more, it's more fine-tuned to what you like, your particular interests. So depending on what you're interested in, it will proactively give you information. It's like reading the front page of a newspaper, but only like the snippets and anything you're interested in. And here's where it's different from a newspaper. You can't really get anything out of it. But with chat, you can say, I like this. Tell me more about it. Oh, but that's not what I understand. Why is what you're saying right and what I'm saying wrong? And, chat is able to give you the next level of details.
It's more interactive that way.
Yes, definitely.
What about the fact that you mentioned hallucinations and that your team
Mm.
tries to prevent these responses where the AI is creatively coming up with something that's not true, which is a hallucination? If I'm a user, how do I know, or how can I nudge an AI to not hallucinate?
I do think hallucination was a really, really big problem in the very early days of chat. But with our latest models, 5.1 specifically, I think we've seen a lot less instances. It is another team in research that specifically works on this and to ground a lot of our responses. But things will still slip out, and there will be times where the model does hallucinate. If that happens, just tell it, no, I don't think you're right. Here's why. And the model it'll prompt the model to rethink. And in a real, day-to-day interaction that you have with a friend, y'all can also say different things, right? And you may be both right based on the perspective that you take or what sources that you got the data from. So if you're not sure if the model is correct, you can always ask, show me your sources. Where did you get this from? Which website agrees with you? And the model will find the website and say, according to this website, this is what it says. And then it will link the sources at the bottom, and you can click on it and read it for yourself.
This is so important for us to teach at schools also. Children need to understand and have confidence in themselves. Even if the AI is
Yes.
correct 90% of the time or 99% of the time, we should still have that confidence to be a little fearless and push this interaction, push it to prove itself more to us and to defend itself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's now talk about Singapore.
Hmm.
You're in Silicon Valley, but you're from Singapore. I'm in Singapore. And here's a crazy stat. I did not know this, but Singapore has the highest per capita ChatGPT usage globally. Why do you think Singapore users have embraced AI so quickly?
I think as a people, Singaporeans are just very adventurous, right? I also do think we have a very highly educated population, and that really helps because, once you understand a lot of how things work, there's less fear, less irrational fear for certain things. Also, I do think the government has done a phenomenal job in educating the population, in pushing computer literacy to its younger generations and upskilling older generations. And so all that causes a higher adoption of AI in general.
We are starting something called AI for Fun, which is this after
Mhm.
school CCA like program for kids to learn AI in a fun and engaging way, which I'm really excited about. And at the same time, we want our kids to do more sports, right? Be more
Right.
healthy, eat their
Hmm.
vegetables. So it's not just an AI world, but it is
Hmm.
living your best life. And that
Yes,
includes
exactly.
having AI as an assistant to do it.
Right. That's right. The nice thing about AI in general is that it is like a encyclopedia that you can talk to.
One of the things that is really exciting when we see Asians, Singaporeans, Africans, people from different parts of the world contributing to such a big US giant like OpenAI is that they bring their own unique lens. You bring a uniquely Singaporean lens, even though you are based in the US. And what do you notice about how people talk about AI in the US versus Asia?
Yeah, I think just even within US, I think people talk about AI very differently in the Bay Area, San Francisco, which is the hub of where a lot of these AI research companies are based out of, and other parts of US, right? Like, in Iowa or Minnesota, they will have a different perspective as well. So I do think, that it is true, like what you mentioned, that the enthusiasm does die down, the wariness, the fear of AI does go up as you get further from the capital of AI. But that's our user base too, right? So understanding what different parts of the world what they are concerned about, what they are fearful of, is a part and parcel of building a product that can address a lot of needs. And I think recently we launched ChatGPT Go. I think this was for Indonesia, maybe a few other countries, but the whole idea of this is to make chat even more accessible because I think our plus subscription was pretty costly for folks who are, in some Asian countries, for example. So I think this allows chat to when you don't know something, it's easy to develop a fear for it. But once you start using it, you might realize, oh, yeah, it's just a thing. I can turn it off if I don't want it to talk to it anymore, or if I don't agree with it, I say, you're wrong, go away. It will like stop talking about it. So really just encouraging and understanding what are the local needs of people, right? And also, when it comes to certain countries, maybe there is literature that is very unique to that country, right? So these are all the areas that we want to get, our model to be better at.
Personally, I've seen that when I travel to across Asia, there's such a high enthusiasm for AI because
Hmm.
it allows them, as you said, now that you're making all these companies are making it more accessible or affordable, it gives them the ability to optimize their time and really reach their own potential. because they're not standing in lines outside banks. They can have telehealth, they can have personalized tutors. This is a game changer for Asia.
For sure. I think a lot of this knowledge was very hard to acquire previously. Sure, there is Google, but even understanding some of this, because this is not in their native languages, right? Asia, we don't have many native English speakers. But if you look at the World Wide Web, most of the articles are in English. It's actually pretty hard to consume. And the translations are kind of mediocre, right? So chat does a few things. Like one, it makes information and distills information a lot better compared to a search where you had to do the search and then sort of rank which articles are more relevant and gather just the parts of the article that is more relevant. So it just makes knowledge a lot more accessible and a lot more consumable for every single user. The bot is consuming that information and presenting it back to the user in a way that they want. So this actually facilitates the intake of knowledge and lowers the barrier to entry for a lot of topics that are otherwise very hard to understand, like very difficult black hole physics or genomics. But I can have a chat with chat and I'll be like, hey, tell me about black holes. And I'm like, I have like secondary school physics, that's it. So you gotta make it even simpler. And then it will make it even simpler. I'm like, give me an analogy because I'm still not getting it. And it will just keep coming back and forth until I understand the concept. Then we'll move on to the next one. And it will even like come up with a study plan for you if you're studying for something or you're trying to learn something in a short amount of time. So it really helps you take in information in the way that you want.
Which is so important, especially in Asia, where the number one priority is always education. Hot tip for
Yes.
me, when I'm trying to really understand something scientific or research, I ask it to explain it to me like Richard Feynman, because I love
Ah,
the way he would
yes.
always explain things. And it does a pretty good
Right.
job. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And so, see, it's explaining to you in the manner that you prefer to consume your information in, and because of that, you're more interested. You listen to it a bit more, so you actually get more out of it.
absolutely. OpenAI just celebrated 1 year in Singapore. Now, from where you sit, what is being here in Singapore unlock for the company, for local talent, for the whole region?
I think, the thing that is so unique about Southeast Asia and Asia is that, there's so many languages, there are so many cultures. It may be easy to teach a model, hey, here's, all the data, here's all the books, and go learn. But it's very hard to teach it culture and say, hey, this is the way we do things, or uh, and it might not fully understand it. So us having a really big cultural and physical presence in Singapore as a gateway to the rest of Asia Pacific, region really helps us boost this, understanding and our presence overall. And so, with local talent, we're going to have a lot of that. Maybe someone previously would just say, "Oh, just train on English," but someone would be like, "No, no, no, no. What about, Bahasa Indonesia? What about Mandarin? What about Hindi? What about Tagalog?" They're going to be different. And the way that we interpret a certain sentence in different languages is very different. So we shouldn't just have the model do A, B, C. Maybe we should say, based on the location of the user, do D or E instead. So things like that, it just creates a much more well-rounded experience for our users all over.
And culturally respectful as well.
Yes, for sure. Very important.
Okay, so we are going to start with some personal reflections. For someone in Indonesia, in India, even Kenya, Brazil, dreaming of a career in AI, what kind of practical advice would you give that person? Where should they start?
The easiest way to start getting into AI for someone who is interested in building AI or building with AI is on the application layer. Because so you assume that there already is a model that is sort of good, right? And for example, OpenAI, we have our open source model, right? So understanding how to use the model from top down in a way that makes sense or is fun for you, that would be the first step. Then after that, you should start understanding, okay, how do I fine tune this model? Which is given a model with weights, change its weights a little bit to do my tasks better. For example, OpenAI, we do have a fine tuning API. A lot of
Mhm.
other models out there have that too. So it just makes it better at doing a certain task, right? So that's going into the innards of the model a bit more. And then you go really down into the, okay, let me now train a small model from scratch myself, and this is where you can actually go to chat and ask, I'd like to learn how models are trained, very simple models, maybe with just like 5 layers, 4 layers. Give me a few links. And chat will actually give you a full study plan with all of the exercises that you can do, like Kaggle challenges that you can try out, and like where to host your model, where you can get GPUs from for cheap that you just use for an hour and it's not too costly for you to train a model. So you can go very, very deep, but definitely start on the application layer because that's closer to life and that's easier to see the impact of what you're doing.
I really like that. So you're basically saying you can, if you wanted to do deep research, play with the open source model. First, try to see where you would see a gap in its improvement.
Mhm.
Then go down, start changing the particulars of it, weights, and then change the data and maybe just build your own. And then
Yeah,
there's
that's
the
right.
other one if you just want to not be a researcher, but you want to build a company. Let's say you wanted to build like a, I don't know, mobile vet, which is my dream because I have a
Hmm.
puppy. I have a dog.
Uh,
So I want to build a business where somebody will come home and do all the grooming and all of that. Do they need to know a lot of AI for that, or they can just use what's
Not
there?
really.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just figure out how to use it. Like what aspects of your business will be much more simplified if you had a chatbot that could do a lot of things, right? That maybe has access to certain data, it needs to feel natural. So you cannot, if AI feels very forced for a particular business, that's probably not the right thing. But for example, like for your pet grooming business, you can have an AI voice agent where people would schedule appointments so that you don't have to have yourself picking up the phone, or someone wants to change appointments. All that can be done via a voice agent. You don't need to hire a real person to do it, or you don't have to do it yourself. So it's a lot taking away a lot of the mundane tasks of the day-to-day, part of running the business.
So if I know how to, the problem that I have, and I give them my data, like the schedule of my groomers,
Yes. Yeah.
then the AI can figure it out. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't
And the
have to.
AI, right. And the AI can be a voice agent that actually like picks up your call. And so the user solves their problem really well. And the agent can, update all of your entries in the spreadsheet for you.
Including booking as well
Yeah,
and scheduling, which is amazing because
absolutely.
that's really, it's not just an assistant, it's an agent that actually can execute actions also for me and
Yes,
my
that's
customers.
right. Yes, that's right.
Now, speaking of jobs, because we talked about groomers, we talked about, customer service. What's the one job AI will create that doesn't exist yet?
I think a lot of roles are starting to exist. They're just not super popular yet, right? I think the role that would continue to be very popular and will gain popularity is what I call like an AI integrations engineer. So this is where I take your business, I take the model, and I make them kiss, right? So I figure out how to pipe your data into the model so that all model responses are grounded on the data. I tune the voice agent such that it knows what it can do and what it cannot do, and when to escalate to you. That's also very important. Like if it thinks that it cannot solve a problem, it will tell the customer, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't help you with this right now, but I can have someone call you back at this time. What time would you like me to call you back? So figuring out, just really tuning that model to the needs of a particular business. I think that is a role that will continue to grow in popularity.
This is really important for our audience. Anybody who's interested, AI integration engineer, note this. Love it.
I think it has different names with different companies, but really your job is not to build a model, but to take an existing model and make it work for your business.
And what's the one thing that people fear about AI, which you think is overblown?
That it will be like Terminator style. It will like get up, revolt, and the whole world will be different. I think all major AI research firms, are very paranoid. I don't think any of the leading, AI companies will be like, oh, I think this one looks sort of okay. Let me just release it to the world and see what it does. So there's a lot of care that goes into safety and alignment to make sure that every model that is released is as safe as we can make it and as good as we can make it. So yeah, I think Terminator style is not gonna be in the future.
I guess one of the things, not only in Singapore, but all over the world, every parent and every child is concerned about young person graduate. Is AI going to take away young people's jobs?
I think there will be certain type of jobs that will have less openings because of AI, right? However, AI is also going to be creating a lot new jobs, right? So I think as young people who are graduating or they're picking their field of study, right? It's very important to pick something that, they are interested in and also that, that they think will still be very like skills that will be relevant 10, 20 years from now. Like the example that I gave is prior to the light bulb, there were a lot of candle makers and a lot of people who sold and resold candles, right? There were, quite a lot of those businesses that are no longer a thing after light bulbs became a thing. However, with the finding of electricity and light bulbs, it created so much more careers like night work that couldn't have happened without light bulbs because it was just not bright enough to do certain things. So with every major breakthrough in technology in mankind's ability to do something, there will be some jobs that will disappear, but at the same time there will be much more jobs that are created because of it.
That optimism is really important to have, especially as a young person who may be inundated by the pessimism sometimes that we find. You're working at OpenAI. It's an incredible company. You have done so much in your career. If you could go back in time, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self and why?
I think, with regards to my younger self, it would really be to experiment a lot more, um, especially when I'm younger. I think I took a safe path. I think if this is what you're interested in, then really go deep. And now the information is literally at our fingertips, right? You can just and the information is there. So you can learn anything that you want. So spend time building your interest, building an expertise, and grow those passions early on and understand more of the world. Don't restrict yourself to just, oh, this is what people told me I should be doing. So I'm going to do that.
I love it. Be free, experiment, let your imagination go wild. Jerene, thank
Definitely.
you so much for this amazing interview. I look forward to having coffee with you next time you're back in Singapore. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. A big thank you to Jerene Yang for giving us a rare, real look inside OpenAI and for proving that the future of AI is shaped by people who stay curious and keep leveling up. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with a friend and hit follow. I'm Aisha Khanna. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.